Certain songs bring you back to a moment or a trip or a feeling. Let's find out what this is for you. I'm Ruby Carr, and this is the story of Fun, We Are Young.
You know the songs.
Just making people feel something.
It's been a pleasure to work on this song with her.
But do you know the history?
To struggle making any kind of record.
I don't always have the direction or concept.
This is Encore, an in-depth look at the stories behind the music. Here's iHeartRadio's Ruby Carr.
Success in the music industry is a funny thing, isn't it? Whether you're a legendary icon in the industry or a one-hit wonder, pop music truly feeds on a what have you done for me lately model, where you're almost always only as popular as your last hit. I think a lot about this when I see comment sections and Twitter threads online declaring a particular artist to be like in their flop era, which can sometimes actually just translate into making slightly less popular music than they did 2 or 3 years ago. Or when someone who's barely done anything with their life refers to a pop star as past their prime. Like, excuse me? Who are you to decide that? In fact, just as this episode is being written, Halsey, she's come out to the press to mention that because her last album, The Great Impersonator, didn't perform as well as Manic, for example, her label is actually not letting her release new music for the time being. Now, I'm sure that there's plenty of nuance on either side here in terms of Halsey's situation, but the point I'm making here is that in most cases, when you hit a certain level of success as an artist and it's time to follow that successful project up, even if you've blown every realistic expectation of success out of the water, you're still going to try something, right? Not necessarily, which brings us to the curious case of Fun. Formed in the dying days of the MySpace era of music in 2008, Fun was the brainchild of the quirky indie pop band The Formats frontman Nate Ruess. After announcing the indefinite hiatus/breakup of The Format, Ruess already had the pieces of Fun in mind, quickly calling upon members of 2 other indie bands he was familiar with, Andrew Dost of Anathallo and Jack Antonoff, ever heard of him, of Steel Train. Both Dost and Antonoff had been tour mates of Ruess and The Format. Andrew had played with The Format as a backup musician, and Steel Train had hit the road with The Format as openers over the years. Ruess would tell Interview magazine, "As soon as The Format ended, I called Jack and Andrew. I had always kept note that those were the 2 people that if anything ever happened, maybe I could see the writing on the wall or something like that. As soon as that became a possibility, I just called them up right away. I asked if there was something we can do. Next thing I knew, I found myself in New Jersey a week later." Fun, stylized as lowercase F-U-N with a period at the end to avoid litigation from a Swedish metal band also called Fun, worked quickly. By 2009, they would release their debut album, Aim and Ignite, a progressive and experimental album that sounded a bit like The Format's back catalog, a bit like an over-theatrical Killers record, and a bit like, the kind of orchestral anthemic Fun that we'd eventually know and love. Fronted by Ruess, who also wrote most of the lyrics and melodies, Antonoff would handle lead guitar, drums, and percussion, while Dost would chip in with the rest of the instrumentation, which varied from everything from piano, guitars, and synths to flugelhorn, trumpet, and glockenspiel. Aim and Ignite was mostly well-received, if not slightly overlooked by most outlets at the time. Nate Ruess's lyrics were praised, as was the overall ambition of the record, but singles At Least I'm Not As Sad As I Used to Be, All the Pretty Girls, and Walking the Dog failed to make any real impact. In the few years that followed, Fun would find success on the road, opening for emo pop darlings like Jack's Mannequin, Paramore, and Panic at the Disco. Fun would make the astute career move to join Paramore and Panic at the Disco's label, Fueled by Ramen, in 2010, and would soft launch their new era of music with a joint single with Panic called Come On in May 2011. For what it's worth, Ruess in particular was skeptical about joining Fueled by Ramen, peeling back the curtain for fans in an open letter, explaining why they made the jump to a major label, writing, This has been in the works for almost 9 months when the head of the label, someone who's reached out to me since even before I was in the format, did his biannual check-in just to have the door slammed in his face. Except the difference is, this time we took the time to listen to what he had to say. I haven't been involved with a label in almost 6 years, and to be honest, I never had any intention to go back. But it really means something when you've been able to watch a label grow over the years and just continue to grow with massive commercial success while maintaining some of the ethics and understanding of what it means to be an independent artist. When the people who work for Fueled by Ramen buy their own tickets to our shows and talk about us with the passion you generally reserve for an artist you're working with, that really means something. So after lengthy discussions, we figured, why not? This is the perfect time for us to give it a try, and I wouldn't worry about us selling out or changing for the wrong reasons. Signing to Fueled by Ramen opened some major doors for Fun. With Fueled by Ramen being a subsidiary of major label Warner Music Group, Fun suddenly had a golden Rolodex of contacts at their disposal for album number 2, and likely the financial backing to make even the loftiest of ambitions a reality as well. After naturally gravitating towards writing songs that were inspired by hip-hop music during a particularly fruitful band getaway to a studio in Woodstock, New York, Fun would do everything in their power to manifest the services of hip-hop super producer Jeff Bhasker for their sophomore album, Some Nights. Bhasker was already well-respected, but had recently come off the massive success of producing and writing with Kanye West for his 2010 magnum opus, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. And like many people at the time, Roos in particular was obsessed with My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, although I'm sure he probably wouldn't want to talk about that now. But then, Nate would tell Billboard that with My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy as his starting point, he began reading the liner notes of his other favorite hip-hop records and noticed that Bhasker's name was all over a lot of them. The writing was on the wall for Fun, and they would accept no substitutes. But would Bhasker accept them? Roos would say, I thought I absolutely have to meet with this guy, and every day we tried to make these meetings work. I think Jeff was blowing me off a couple of times. He was working with Beyonce and just didn't have any time when some kid from some random band really wants to sit down and meet with you. Luckily, someone twisted his arm and made him. In a true sliding doors moment, We Are Young may never have happened without Bhasker, and Bhasker may have never worked out for Fun without We Are Young. Let me explain. As Roos would admit to Rolling Stone in 2012, the bones of We Are Young existed before Bhasker's services were secured for the group, and it would take a chance meeting with Jeff and a little bit of liquid courage to pull the song out of him.
When We Are Young first came to be, I was driving somewhere. We were meeting with a producer who we thought was going to make the album, and so I was driving to meet Andrew in the city for dinner with this producer. And I think I was really inspired because we had just had a weekend where we went up to Woodstock and we started to try and suss out a few of the songs, talk conceptually about what the album was kind of going to be about. And so I think I felt a lot of pressure relief, and those are good times when songs just kind of come to you. So I'm driving and suddenly it's like, tonight, we are young. I had a lyric that was like, we are young, having fun, so let's set, and it kind of just like went from there. It really like wrote itself, and I lived with it for about a week, thinking like, all right, well those are great lyrics, but I'm not so sure about the melody, and so I started to try and write a completely different song, like a completely different version of We Are Young. It started to become a political song of like the arrogance of America, and like let's set the world on fire just so that we can be like better than even the sun, something like that. And I thought like that's cool on one hand, but that the chorus and that melody really started to stick to me, and really like started to feel a lot like, all right, I think I need to explore this as a chorus. And by the end of the week, I finally got a chance to meet up with Jeff, and so. When I sat down with Jeff Bhasker and he and I are sitting there talking, then he takes me up to his room to play me some of the Beyonce demos that he had been working on. And I think I was drunk at the time, so I just started singing him that chorus because it was so fresh on my mind, and he just kind of like stopped right there.
Yes, as legend has it, it was a quick, inebriated 10-minute meeting with Jeff in which Bhaskar either saw something in Roos during their incredibly brief initial chat, I don't know, maybe he just felt sorry for him, that compelled him to invite the singer up to his hotel to check out some Beyoncé tracks, which, by the way, is just a huge flex. Like, yeah, come up and listen to some unreleased Beyoncé tracks I have that I didn't steal out of the back of a car, no big deal. Bhaskar corroborated this messy yet beautiful series of events to Fuse.
Nate brought the song to me and sang that to me. And, most people are familiar with the song now. But this was the very, very beginning of how the song was created. And I made a little drum beat on one of these guys here. And I said, okay, Nate, just sing over this. Sing the song. And one of the interesting things about this song is Nate had never multi-tracked his vocals before. And I said, okay, just sing it over and over and over again. And after he was done, I said, normally we'd go back and overdub. Okay, do an overdub. He just sang it a bunch of times, and then I chopped out all the takes he did and put them all together. And I said, wow.
It was the sloppy, unfinished chorus of We Are Young sang at Jeff Bhaskar that night that actually got the partnership between Bhaskar and the boys over the line, and Bhaskar's keen ear and quick thinking that inspired him to take a risk on fun. From there, the partners in crime wasted no time. The demo for We Are Young was recorded the very next day. Despite it being a seemingly left-field approach, Bhaskar had never worked with an indie pop rock band, and Fun had never worked with a hip-hop producer. The two parties would eventually catch lightning in a bottle. Of the writing process, Doss would tell Huffington Post, "Typically, Nate will come in with lyrics and a melody, then Jack and I will build the music around that and set up the chord structure, decide which instruments are going to enter and where, and how best we're going to support that melody. That's usually the way it goes. Other times, Jack or I will bring an instrumental piece and Nate will write lyrics to that. It's one of those starting points, whether it's either Nate, Jack, or I, we just build it all together from there. Even when someone has a pretty well-defined framework to start with, there's much give and take with the three of us, where the egos pretty much disappear and everybody is happy to work towards the best possible song." From there, they would bring the music to Bhaskar, who would implore them to tighten the songs up, then punch the songs up with hip-hop production techniques. Doss would tell LA Music Blog, "On AIM and Ignite, there was a tendency to overdo things thousands of times. These twists and turns and inversions and different instruments because we had them around and we were in the studio and figured, why not? With some nights, it was about what to do to give the songs what they really need." Jeff was a proponent of sometimes the biggest sound was a single instrument. He said, "Let's not overcram songs with ideas, and everything that makes the song should be well chosen. If you can't hear it or don't care about it, let's cut it." It resonated with us. It was important for us to realize what songs need and don't need. On AIM and Ignite, it was about making songs full, and these songs breathe more. Nate is a once-in-a-lifetime talent, and we try to use his voice as an instrument as much as possible, too. I think one of the coolest parts of this story is that by the sounds of things, partially because it was such a long shot, Nate, Andrew, and Jack really did seem to have an earnest sense of reverence for the work Jeff Bhaskar was doing in modern hip-hop, and now they didn't just get to make music that sounded Jeff Bhaskar-esque, they were actually working with a contemporary hero of theirs. Jack Antonoff and Nate Roos would tell Rolling Stone,
"My first thought wasn't necessarily that this is a hit song. It was just I couldn't believe how, because we were obsessed with Dark Twisted Fantasy and Jeff made that album, and it was one of those scenarios of you're obsessed with something and you dream about working someone and hopefully it happens 10 years later, but it happened 2 weeks later. So I was just kind of freaking out about the way Nate's voice sounded with 8 layers. That's something we'd never done before, and that was such a I guess Jeff move, and then the production, those beats, that huge snare, that big gunshot, and those toms, that's still from the original demo. Actually, pretty much the original demo, at least the chorus is exactly what it sounds like now. And it was hearing, actually to get real specific, it was like hearing the very thing that inspired us to make the album was what made our album physically, like that person. So that was like a bizarre circle of events.
Yeah, it was really weird to come. Jeff and I got out of the studio on that early version of We Are Young, and we spent until, because that was when I learned about hip hop studio time. So we were there until 5 o'clock in the morning, and I got out, and I wasn't living in the city at the time, so I stayed at the Ace Hotel, and I had to just like run back. I think I was still like rather drunk, but also just drunk off of this experience of working with Jeff, having this fantasy that we'd work with this guy who did these Kanye West, these Drake albums, and suddenly it happened, and we had a very tangible song to play. And so I sent them the chorus that night at about 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was just so nervous about everything that had happened that I woke up about 3 or 4 hours later, just got like no sleep, and then called Jack first thing, and he was just like blown away by it. It was really good. It felt like something that we, just maybe 3 weeks before, had really started to conceptualize and thought like in a dream world we would get to work with this guy, and then suddenly
it never happens like that. You always get like the guy 5 guys below that. Like this guy worked with this guy once and he was influenced by him, so this is perfect. But we actually got to go right there, which has really never happened to us with anything.
You can hear how giddy a young Antonoff was in that clip. So fun, literally. From there, Basker would recommend a still relatively unknown but critically acclaimed Janelle Monáe to feature on the song, although to be fair, you can barely tell it's her. And the rest is history. Okay, not exactly. Let's talk about that. Like we alluded to earlier this season in our episode on Ariana Grande's One Last Time, and actually discussed quite a bit when Miles profiled Florence and the Machine's Dog Days Are Over, for a brief time in music history, the music industry, it ran on Glee, baby. Yes, in the early 2010s, let me tell ya, the Fox-helmed musical sitcom was the biggest thing in music since Napster for pop heads to find their favorite new songs, as the quirky and campy cast of characters not only covered some of the most famous songs in the world, but also made songs famous simply by belting out their own renditions. And a teenage Ruby was obsessed with Glee, I won't lie. I still try to break out into songs sometimes. So it was a real coup for fun that after an initial release of We Are Young in September 2011 that basically went nowhere, the song was re-released to radio on December 6th, 2011, the exact date that Glee Season 3, Episode 8 aired. Featured on that episode, called Hold On to 16, were covers of Toby Keith, Destiny's Child, Janet and Michael Jackson, and as a closing number, you guessed it, Fun's We Are Young. Critics and fans alike were buzzing over the cover, which for many people may have been their blind introduction to the song. And by the way, that's not just me saying it, okay? The data backs it up. Get this. When the Billboard charts came out the following week, which obviously included We Are Young, the Glee cast version debuted at number 12 on the Hot 100. The original? Number 53, making its debut on the same chart. And in sales the following week, when the Glee version was available, total sales for the track jumped 1,650% from 3,000 to 49,000 copies sold. The power of Glee, man, I'm telling you. Things stayed at a gentle simmer for the better part of 2 months for the band before We Are Young made its commercial debut at the Super Bowl in 2012. Appearing in the Chevrolet Sonic Stunt commercial, the song is featured in the background as the Chevy Sonic subcompact does stunts that you would mostly associate with extreme sports. For example, the car does a skateboard kickflip, bungee jumps, and skydives. The marketing execs were thrilled with the integration, with creative directors quoted in Billboard as saying, "It's a beautiful song with a number of different projections in that driving beat and very sweet melody. Chevrolet instantly fell in love with it too. We could go through trying a couple of different tracks, but it turned out once we played this song, even during a rough early cut, there was no question. It was just great." Roos and the band, to their credit, understood the assignment, noting in the same chat with Billboard, "I've been doing this for 10 years and never had anything happen quite the way it's happened in the last year." The exposure brought to the band by having a commercial air during the most watched event in America, yeah, it paid off, and We Are Young went from strength to strength. Suddenly, everyone wanted a piece of the action, and Fun went from quirky little indie band to full-on pop superstardom. It was covered by a cappella mega group Pentatonix, which quickly went viral, and X Factor winners Little Mix. It was used in Gossip Girl, This Is 40, 90210, another Super Bowl ad the following year for Taco Bell, and in a John Cena versus Dwayne The Rock Johnson hype package for WrestleMania 28. Now, looking back on it all in 2025, it doesn't seem like such a big deal that one of the biggest pop songs ever was highly coveted by brands for their marketing campaigns or used as sonic product placement in shows and movies. But as a reminder, Nate himself did mention in their open letter to Fun fans when they signed to Fueled by Ramen, they explicitly were not going to sell out. Here's what the band told Much about their openness to, let's call it corporate synergy in 2012.
Like, it's completely different than it used to be, the idea of doing that, right?
Well, I think to an extent, as long as you're not pushing cigarettes or, something that's sending a wrong message, or if we knew that maybe the company had, political agendas not in line with ours, stuff like that, and we would do it. But I mean, we hate to say it, but we love corporate America. We ride in Chevys, we do all those type of things, and if they're going to use our song tastefully, which they did, there's a car doing a kickflip or something, and it ended up being epic, then we have no opposition to that, because look at what it did for us. It introduced us to a whole different demographic, and that's just one commercial. That doesn't define who we are. We let people come to the show and see who we are, and they can see that we're not just based off of a car commercial. So it's just some money in our pocket and some exposure.
By March 7th, 2012, We Are Young became a #1 Billboard Hot 100 hit, and it stayed there for 6 consecutive weeks. As we were just pre-digital streaming era, it also became the first and only song to record 300,000 digital downloads a week for 7 weeks straight, pushing it to 5 times platinum status in 2012 alone. It's now been certified diamond as of 2019. On radio, it topped the Hot 100 airplay chart for 7 weeks, becoming the first group since Destiny's Child with Survivor in 2001 to do so. With all of the charting and commercial success, it came as no surprise when Fun were nominated for 6 Grammy Awards in 2013. The band would win the Grammy Award for Best New Artist, and of course, We Are Young won the Grammy Award for Song of the Year, beating out former Encore subject Carly Rae Jepsen's Call Me Maybe. Of their 4 Grammy losses that year, you might be surprised to hear 2 of them were to Gautier and Kimbra's Somebody That I Used to Know. The Flash in the Pan song also had a massive year, taking home Record of the Year and Pop Duo Performance at that same year's ceremony. But based on the strength of their follow-up singles, Fun were decidedly not a flash in the pan. Second single, Some Nights, was another massive hit for the group, going 7 times platinum in the US and 5 times platinum here in Canada, while third single, Carry On, also became a comfortable top 20 hit for the band. All in all, Some Nights, the album, would go 3 times platinum in the US and achieve platinum status in Canada, and the group would tour the album tirelessly through to the end of 2013, seemingly on top of the world. That year, they came to the Ottawa Blues Fest, and I know this because I drove from Nova Scotia to Ottawa for the show, which is about 14 hours, and I think we listened to Some Nights the whole time. So Fun and We Are Young will forever take me back to that drive and eating pepperoni sticks from the gas station. 2014 saw the band do a few music festival dates while Jack Antonoff announced the formation of his, at the time, assumed side project, the band Bleachers. Speaking of Antonoff and side projects, in late 2013, Jack Antonoff and, I don't know if you've ever heard of her, Taylor Swift? They teamed up for the very first time on a lesser-known soundtrack cut entitled Sweeter Than Fiction for the movie One Chance. The Simon Cowell-produced film was a box office bomb, but did spark the creative relationship between Jack and Taylor, and by the time 2014 rolled around, Antonoff and Swift had written and produced 3 songs together for her now iconic and my favorite album, 1989. Less than 4 months after the release of 1989, in February of 2015, Fun announced on their Facebook page that for all intents and purposes, Fun was done. On their breakup, Fun would officially say, Fun was founded by the three of us at a time when we were coming out of our own bands. One thing that has always been so special about Fun is that we exist as three individuals in music who come together to do something collaborative. We make fun records when we are super inspired to do so. Currently, Nate is working on his first solo album, Andrew is scoring films, and Jack is on tour and working on Bleacher's music. The three of us have always followed inspiration wherever it leads us. Sometimes that inspiration leads to fun music, sometimes it leads to musical endeavors outside of fun. We see all of it as part of the ecosystem that makes fun, fun. The relatively boilerplate statement and sudden breakup confounded fans, but Nate Ruess would open up quite a bit more to Rolling Stone that very same month. While insisting that Antonoff's choice to front his new band Bleachers had nothing to do with the split, Ruess instead admitted he was the major catalyst of the split, as he was writing a ton of new music and didn't feel like they were songs he needed to share. He said, people were expecting a lot out of the next Fun album. Everybody wanted to squeeze every last drop out of it, but those things are hard to duplicate. People thought I was nuts, but I'm not out to chase something. I'm out to be happy. You get a little selfish about the songs that you write, and it's really hard to do that in a group setting where there are two other people and you have to think about everybody else's feelings. I'm writing and singing these songs about myself. When you work with producers versus bandmates, that line becomes a lot less blurry. Finally, Ruess would admit that, to be honest, the other two guys in Fun weren't too happy with his decision, saying, I handled things poorly. It was a sloppy, long kind of, guys, I've got something that I really want to do, and I need the opportunity to do that. Ruess would release his solo album called Grand Romantic in 2015, featuring production once again from Jeff Bhasker and a couple of writing credits from Andrew Dost, leading fans to speculate that the solo project was kind of a co-opted Fun record in everything but name. The album sold modestly and the single was not a success. Ruess has transitioned into a comfortably successful songwriter for hire in the years that have followed, writing songs for Halsey, Eminem, and the Kid Laroi, to name a few. Over in Antonoff land, though, things would go from strength to strength. Swift's 1989 would of course win Album of the Year and Best Pop Vocal Album at the 2016 Grammy Awards. And our boy Jack was essentially a made man. While Bleachers have never truly broken through as a cultural phenomenon, Antonoff's work with Taylor Swift has transformed his career into one of a producer-songwriter extraordinaire. Antonoff credits Swift immensely for his success as a producer, telling the New York Times in 2020, Taylor's the first person who let me produce a song. Before Taylor, everybody said, you're not a producer. It took Taylor Swift to say, I like the way this sounds. In the years following Fun, Jack Antonoff has received massive critical acclaim for his work with Lorde for her albums Melodrama and Solar Power, as well as Lana Del Rey's Norman fucking Rockwell and Did You Know That There's a Tunnel Under Ocean Boulevard, Sabrina Carpenter's Short and Sweet and Man's Best Friend, as well as a countless amount of work with Taylor Swift, providing writing and production on Reputation, Lover, Folklore, Evermore, Midnights, The Tortured Poets Department, and the Taylor's Version catalog of re-releases. For the most part, Antonoff has kept mum on Fun, but late last year in an interview with the LA Times, he provided a glimpse into his feelings on his late band, which is now more than 10 years removed from a breakup. When music critic Michael Wood would note that Fun was once the biggest thing since sliced bread, and now nobody talks about them, Antonoff was pretty blunt in his response. I think you're illustrating why I chose to not do that much longer. I know when something will age well, and that's why I stay with the things that I want to do. There was something very accidental about Fun, which is also what stressed me out about it. It wasn't my band. I'm a band leader, and I've always been a band leader. I like singing my lyrics. I like telling my story. So if I'm not getting that, I don't really want to do it much. Of the three members, Andrew Dost has been the most low-key post-Fun. After starting his jazz fusion band, Metal Bubble Trio, soon after the breakup, he would do some work composing music for films and TV shows before returning to his home state of Michigan to work as an instructor for the singer-songwriter program at Interlochen Center for the Arts. So that's the story of the song you remember, but the band maybe you forgot. Fun, We Are Young. Thanks for listening to Encore. I'm Ruby Carr. New episodes every Thursday.
Encore is an iHeartRadio Canada podcast. Download the free iHeartRadio app and subscribe.
Thank you so much for coming.